Based on the success of some of my other cactus, today we'll be growing two of my favourites. First is a peyote, which is a cactus famously used by Southern Plains Native Americans as a hallucinogenic in rituals. The second is another I want to experiment with growing outside, which is Optunia Santa Rita, which is purple prickly pear or prickly pear Santa Rita.
So to grow both the peyote and my purple prickly pear seeds, we have two mixes we're going to make. One that is a mixture of a cocoa coir based compost and a lot of grit, and that'll be for the peyote. The grit will help with the overall structure over time, so it won't collapse as much, and that'll be a very heavy draining grit mix. And then for the seeds, we're actually going to be using a mix of the cocoa coir compost again, but actually with a lot of horticultural silver sand, and that will increase the drainage significantly, but not have the large particulates that we get with the grit that might hinder some of the young root development in the cactus. And the aim with these mixes is to try and reduce the nutrition of the compost so much that the plant itself tries to put out more roots. I think, I'm not an expert in cactuses, but as I understand it from some of the trials I've had with my other varieties, is that if the nutrition is too high, the cactus itself will grow quite quickly, but it won't put its roots out as evenly, and so it won't be as strongly embedded. And actually we can see that with some of my examples. This one's not too bad today, but these are some old San Pedros, the worst of my batch, but this one in particular has been falling over quite a lot, and so I've potted it up into a much less nutrient dense mix, and that's helped it to root itself better. So firstly, we'll work on the prickly pears. So what we're going to do is using a wide-based pot, we're just going to try and start them in this. So what I'm doing is about a 50% mix. So 50% compost, 50% sand. So the compost holds the nutrition and the water. The sand adds the drainage and reduces the density of nutrition, and we'll sort of mix that in as much as possible, trying to reduce so massage that through. There we go. That looks like a nice seed bed to me. And then we take the prickly pear seeds and we surface sow them. What I'm going to do is try and evenly space them out. I'm not going to bury them. I'm going to just tap the compost so that they are nice and firm in, as opposed to just straight burying them. Now, it doesn't look like there's actually anything in there, but what's happened is where I've used some sand and compost in the past, it's actually collapsed over time, and so you can see that they've actually become deep, sort of embedded in the sand here. They are still alive, but we need to get them out so we can grow them on. And so that is why we're using more grit. So let's use some little pots for a couple, and then we'll repot the others. So you see it's still got quite a small root system there. We want to encourage it to put its roots out a little bit more, and then it's not such a big deal with these ones as they are quite small naturally anyway, but it's just a bit better for the cactus health. Let's put a bit more grit in there. Let's be careful with it, holding it from the top and then just filling around it. I think that's a pretty good mix there. Hopefully enough grit. Because I'm not a cactus grower and just a general gardener, I typically veer a little bit too much on the side of using compost, but I think this is a very, very gritty mix. I think it should be fine. But there we go. How good does that look? The look is use a bit of sand around it as well, and then that will make, if I push it down enough, there we go, and that will make that pop against the pot, as opposed to with the grit where it sort of blends in a little bit. Here we are. How nice is that? Now, I'm really happy with how that looks, but I won't be watering it yet, just because to make that cocoa coir mix, it comes from a dry mix to start with and you have to rehydrate it. So there is moisture in that soil. It should be fine for the cactus for now. Then let's repeat that for all the other three as well. So I've now potted on the smaller ones, but I've also kept the sort of bulk that are in this pot here as well, and I've just refreshed the soil with a better drainage medium and got them sort of out of that collapsed soil, and I think that looks pretty good. It's a little bit lopsided, so I'm just going to do some work to take off some of the edges here, but as you can see, it shows off the peyote really nicely. You can see we've got quite a lot of them growing through. So I'm really happy with that, and I'll be showing the progress of all these cactus, specifically the prickly pears, but also the peyote throughout all my other videos. This might be the last video on the cactus for a little while, and we'll be doing some other stuff in the meantime, but I'll keep you updated on them.